We are recording.
Yay!
Yay.
Oh, here we go.
Well done, George. Well done.
Sorry,
I don't know what I did other than like get pissed off and try 3 different things. I think it's because I was logged in Chrome to the Zoom account, but I was opening the link in Firefox. So,
bless you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and get underway here. Thank you for everyone's patience. We're going to start off with announcements, and I'll start off with an announcement. So we recently upgraded the koha-US.org website. We are now operating under WordPress. The site doesn't look a whole lot different. I managed to duplicate the site fairly well, but we have some functionality to it that we didn't have before, and we have an events calendar at the bottom, which is new. All the events on the site are in Central Time, so please adjust accordingly. That was the trade-off. I couldn't figure out how to make it appear in your own local time zone, so maybe down the road George can perform some voodoo that he does. But otherwise, we're up and running and good to go, and we're going to be expanding things. I've posted some of the trainings that we're working on. I'm working on past conferences. We're trying to move stuff over from the .NET site because that site's going to be going away in the near future. So we're trying to get as much content moved over as possible so that we're in a central location. So that's my announcement for this morning. How are all of you doing, and any announcements on your end?
Well, we are upgrading on Thursday evening, so has anybody upgraded yet?
Fred did. I do believe he did
so.
that inadvertently.
To what version?
1711.
Yes. Yeah, I hit the wrong button.
Kresge will be updating. Oh my God, the wrong button syndrome. Kresge will be upgrading from 1705 to 1805 once we perform fiscal year close and open. 1805 had something that looked like it was going to be useful to me while 1805 did, while 1711 did not. And so this will be the first time I've actually skipped a major version. Usually I stay on top of major versions, but right now I'm only running 1705.12 or something like that. And it'll be interesting to see how that exactly works, because my development server was blasted out of the water, as many of you know, from the creation of the document that I put together that's shared with everybody on how to get Koha installation running. So once I figure out how to successfully clone my acquisitions database, which I think I've got down, and after I get past probably the end of July, 1805 will be in place here. 1805,
you like the bleeding edge.
We live to die here at Kresge. Why do you think we don't have any more books?
That's amazing.
So what was the feature that you were going for?
I don't quite remember, but I saw it in the release, and I'm like, ooh, this sounds like something that I want to have in place. I think it was a fail-safe or something, or some sort of functionality regarding existing orders that I had always thought should be in place, but wasn't. So I'm going to have to take a look back at it. But it was enough to make me say, for my limited implementation here, that it was something I wanted to go to right away instead of going the 1805 route or the 1711 route and then upgrading to 1805. I'm going to go from one right to the other.
Awesome.
There was a message. Well, Heather said something over in the chat box. They're upgrading this weekend.
Yeah.
There was a message I saw either on the development list or the Koha community list saying don't upgrade. Nobody should upgrade to 1805 until it's at least at 1805.01 because there's some major bug, and I can't find the email right now.
Yes, I recall reading that as well. So my decision to wait until at least the end of July just kind of very nicely worked out. Although on the development server, I'm going to install 1805 from scratch, and it'll be interesting to see if that same issue manifests itself in a fresh install or only in an upgrade?
Yeah, I've heard with Koha releases, as with pancakes and children, if the first one doesn't do too well, just season the griddle and throw it away.
Well, John, report back on that then.
It's an email from Jonathan. He says a critical bug has been found in 1805.00. If item types are not defined at the biblio level, you should not upgrade to 1805.01 or 00. And there's the bug number for Bugzilla.
And John, if you
Bugzilla
remember
back?
What was that?
Is Bugzilla back? I had heard it was down, at least briefly.
I think they did an update on the Bugzilla software, and it's back right now. I was just at that link, so.
I was saying, John, if you remember the feature, could you send it out to the koha-US listserv?
Maybe I'll take a look while we're looking here and see if I can recall what it was.
I was looking at my list of bugs on Bugzilla this morning, and there are a couple of things that I like that are coming in 1805. The overwrite-off problem is fixed, and there's on Bugzilla number 9, bug 9302. 1805 will allow you to be able to merge patrons. So if you have two patrons this happens all the time, where you have some staff member that accidentally creates a duplicate patron. There'll be a merge feature, so you can take two patrons. And
This is in 1711 or
1805.
1805, yeah.
Bummer.
That's a huge. I will love to see that in 1805 to be able to.
Yeah, that is
to merge
cool.
two patrons.
All right.
And I have found what I was looking for. It's actually a new feature, which apparently was based on bug 19289, which allows for the configuration of the fields in the catalog details form of acquisitions baskets, which allows you to essentially create a brief bibliographic record. You create these brief bib records, but then if you actually have to go back in and edit them, they all fail validation because they don't have all of the required elements of a bibliographic record, including things like an 003 and a timestamp and all this other stuff. And for people that eventually upgrade their records to full ones, that may or may not create a problem, but we usually don't do that. And so when we have to go in and fix something, we end up fixing a whole lot more because we weren't able to specify all of these various required fields. And it looks like this feature should actually take care of that now.
Excellent. I have one I will post up here. This one's pretty interesting. This is bug 13680. I've been involved in the conversation there, and for those of you that are catalogers, might want to get involved and weigh in. It's in discussion, but basically the bug talks about how when you're editing items in a record, if you have a lot of items, you have to scroll way down to actually get to the form where you enter stuff in, and that's pretty onerous for some of the bigger records that have a ton of items on it. Initially, there had been talk about moving the form to the top of the page and having the list of items below that. I threw in there suggestions, either collapse the list or go to modal when editing an item, and they ran with the modal. They're actually mocking up some samples of a modal interface for that form for editing items, and it looks pretty good. There's also a side discussion in there about changing the views from all the tabs on the side up to an action button at the top. And so that one's kind of up in the air and debatable. So we welcome comments on the mock-up. There's a couple attachments with the layouts that show in there, and I think they look pretty great. So and I think that's a huge improvement on that page too. I've always thought it was kind of cluttered and overkill with the list of items when you're trying to enter or edit one item. So, any other announcements?
Don't know if this is really an announcement, but just want to update you with what I've been trying to do with the bootable USB koha system. I haven't been very successful tried installing Linux or Ubuntu on the USB drive, and that got part of the way and then died. So now I'm trying to do a system on just a plain hard drive and creating an ISO file and seeing if I can install that. One thing I've realized, I am trying to use Ubuntu 18.04, the absolute latest long-term. And I've heard here and there that it's not entirely compatible with koha 18.05. Can anyone advise me? Anyone hear anything about it?
Now, most of these places distribute live systems already that you can just burn to a USB drive and run, and including Debian if you wanted to do it on Debian.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm trying to make a new one which is even more user-friendly. We'll see.
Okay.
With I put in XFCE4 so I could design a page where all the configuration files are there on one page. Just click and open it.
Mm-hmm.
Just trying to make it as easy as possible to do the configuration and not to do. I brought up last week in WGET dash. It's a capital O and all that.
You could, if you write the scripts for the installation, you could sort of distribute the USB with the installer, so it's just a double click to run.
Yeah. But unfortunately, it turns out that, when an HVAC tech goes into the basement and bursts out laughing and says, "Wow, I got to take pictures of this," it's not good news. So that's been taking up a bit of my time.
All right.
No one
Any
told
other
him what he was
announcements?
expecting. Also, I put up the latest Adventures of the Avenging Chicken, which MLA 2018, which includes, and the reason I'm bringing it up here, a link to my koha wrap that I did for my favorite tool. It's avengingchicken.online/MLA2018. I managed to wipe out the index file for the root directory, but someday I'll fix it. It's a good example of middle-aged Caucasian rap.
All right, last call for announcements. All right, we're going to move on. Conference update. koha-US and Bywater are officially working together to work on the conference. We had our first meeting yesterday. We are working on several aspects of the conference. Right now, I believe there's, what'd they say, 120? 120 people registered. We only have 9 proposals at this point, but so we need to get more proposals in for the conference. And being that this is a U.S. conference, I highly encourage any and all people to consider something to contribute. I'll even be working on something if I can.
Everybody at this meeting has to submit at least one proposal.
Okay.
Well, I have an idea for a proposal, which is crossing the Linux barrier, probably roundtable discussion, panel discussion. I am not qualified to lead it, but I am more than happy to be on it.
Well, it is on the topics there. So we
Okay,
don't
good.
have anybody. We don't have anybody. Well, actually, somebody.
At the board meeting you missed, Christopher, we talked about the idea of breaking the Linux barriers a panel or a roundtable.
I think that's a fantastic idea. The more people that we can get involved in that conversation, the better. So yeah, things are underway. It's a weekly meeting, and on Tuesdays, 9 a.m. Pacific time. So we have our conference committee joining up with Bywater's committee to work on that. And if anybody is interested in joining that committee, we'll certainly welcome you. So,
where is the conference, Christopher, for those that may not know?
Conference is going to be in Portland, Oregon. It's going to be on campus of, I believe they said Portland State University.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I told them to make sure to clarify because there's a Portland State University and there's a University of Portland. So it is the Portland State. Brendan Gallagher, who's kind of spearheading this, wasn't there yesterday, so he didn't he wasn't available to give a lot of details on the facility, but he should be there next week.
And I just put a link in the chat box to the conference website.
I was just going to say the website's live. And also, for those who might not know this as well, it's in conjunction with the International KOA Con. So it's koha-US and KOA Con taking place.
Yeah. Koha-Con is
Consecutively.
the international conference, and we're kind of just joining in with that whole setup. So
Barbara has a question in the chat box, and Ben just posted a comment for Fred in the chat box. Yeah. Barbara wants to know, what does the cultural day consist of?
that has not been determined yet. That's another thing that Brendan is working on, and there was a little bit of discussion, but I wasn't sure. It sounded like they weren't sure if that was going to go through or not. So, hopefully we'll know more next week, but at this point we don't know.
So, since this is an international conference, remember everybody that if you do present something, you can put that on your resume as I presented at an international conference, even if it was just in Oregon.
Yeah, but they serve English muffins in the hotel.
And anybody that's interested in going to the conference, since it is in Oregon, it is legal to smoke pot in Oregon. So there's another selling point.
Thank you, George.
Just like the conference in Washington 4 years ago.
So we know what George will be doing.
Yeah, right. I don't need that kind of crap from my wife. You did what?
All right. Open discussion, bugs, issues, etc. First on the list, Nancy. Is Nancy here?
She was. Yeah, she's right there.
I'm not seeing her name. There she is. Okay. Yeah, Nancy, you had brought up feature creep. And
Yes,
it sounds like an ominous creature.
Yes, it looked ominous, so I looked it over, and I saw our bug to have all the facets fixed that will show you only available items in your searches was one of the things they're going to take out because it doesn't work. So I would like for us to do something to get that thing fixed, because I think it's a basic feature that should work. But right now it's destined to be buried.
I think facets might be in limbo at the moment because of the database. They're working towards moving off of, I cannot think of names right now. They're changing.
Zebra.
Yeah.
Zebra to Elasticsearch.
Yes. And so that might be something that will hold it up until they move over, because Elasticsearch is supposed to have more functionality and capability, and they're waiting till that move to see what they can do with that. So
Do we have a timeline on that, or any idea how long that's going to take?
Several years ago is what I was I heard.
Yeah, 4 years ago, Brendan was talking about how Elasticsearch is just around the corner.
Right.
it's close.
It is.
It's definitely a lot closer. Yes.
Right now. I mean, it
on
is
the horizon.
Run it, so.
Okay.
Is there a program where someone will explain the new features and describe the difference between Zebra and Elasticsearch, and how that affects
a few months ago.
general sysadmin?
Yeah, I think Nick did one a few months ago.
Yes, I remember that, and it. I liked seeing that. I would have liked for it to be a little bit more detail specific, just because that's what I like. But I look forward to that change in searching, because Elasticsearch is supposed to also be faster than the Zebra mechanism currently in place.
I agree with John. I would have liked some more details in that, but I think maybe they have it on their YouTube channel, Fred.
Okay.
Possibly. I just remember that it was actually something, it didn't take much. Once you had Elasticsearch installed, it did not take much to switch between Zebra and Elasticsearch. Like, there were maybe only 2 settings, if that needed to be modified. And I don't even think they were command line settings. They were global settings that you set through the browser in administration. And so you could actually run not side-by-side searches effectively, but you had the capability of doing something just by toggling 2 quick things once you had the framework in place in your installation.
I just put a link to the Elasticsearch town hall in that chat box there.
Thank you. That sounds like the kind of improvement that really is an improvement, and makes me think, ooh.
Well, it wasn't, when he showed it last, and this was in the fall, it wasn't yet at feature parity with Zebra. Yeah. And I think that's kind of that. The feature parity with Zebra is around the corner, and then building new features is after that. So.
Well, and it looks like I just put a bug in the chat for Elasticsearch configurable facets that he was working on yesterday.
Yeah.
Or Jonathan, I guess, was working on it just yesterday, where you'll be able to pick which facets you want. So they're definitely working on facets for Elasticsearch right now.
That sounds nice too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the one reason I know that facets are kind of a holdup in the existing Zebra database is because I had put in some bugs, and we had some discussions about the fact that the facets over on the side for picking libraries was limited to like the first X amount of results, and so you weren't seeing all libraries there represented in the facets. And I had brought up, hey, why don't we just show all the libraries instead of depending on what's in the results. And so there was a holdup on that because Elasticsearch is so close. So they're really not wanting to spend a bunch of time in that when it's going to be changing around the corner here.
Also, the current facets seem to be limited to 1,000.
So anything else, Nancy? Oh, you're muted.
Okay, I'm back. 1505, that's one that's funded in development. And I have a development also on that page. It doesn't have a bug number attached, but they're similar, and I think they're conflicting. It's about holds, how they show up as can you check them out if they haven't been pulled yet? Yes, no, do they show as available or on hold? And right now, that the way that it's set up now, it's blocking my people at self-check because I don't allow them to check out someone else's hold, because the self-checks are right next to the hold shelf, and I don't want them mining AV and stuff like that. So we have to override a lot of stuff at self-check. So your 1505 development.
Are you sure it's 1505? Because I just went to 1505 and it's.
Oh, we lost her. There she is.
Oh,
Back in a moment.
I took a little vacation. Okay.
So Nancy, we're wanting some clarification on the bug because we're not seeing the same thing.
It's 1505. I think it's 1505.
On Bugzilla, 1505 is primary key on borrower number.
No, that's not it. Okay, I wrote down the wrong number. Doggone it. It's on the Bywater development site, and it's just been funded. Oh, I don't have it. Never mind. I'll talk about it next time. I'll get my numbers right. But anyway, it just kind of brings up a problem we have where one guy's developments is kind of overriding someone else's.
Well, I think that's why they made an effort to make everything into a system preference.
That would be great.
And that's kind of almost every development we do now. It's a system preference to do this or do that.
Mm-hmm. Well, right now it's a turn it on or turn it off, and neither one works good for me.
The bug number is 15505.
Ah, 15.
There's just another 50 in there.
Okay, thank you.
Is this the mark hold items on hold instead of available?
Yeah, that's the one that's on the development that got funded. And Christopher, you actually commented on it. Whoops.
Yeah. Yeah,
but it's kind of up in the air, but I'm afraid it's going to really mess things up for me. My self-checks right now will not let you check out something that's on hold. And I can either say everything that's on the hold shelf is on hold, plus the stuff we haven't pulled off the shelves or had time to go get. So my patrons get that item first before we do, and then they can't check it out.
I'm a little confused about the problem, about the issue here. This just appears to be how it's
displayed.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, well, mine is something kind of different. But the way that they were talking about working on it kind of made me nervous.
This one, 15505, is when an item is in the holds queue. It's on the holds to pull list.
Right. That's my problem.
So it's on the list of things that need to be pulled from the shelf and shipped to another library or checked in and put on the hold shelf. This would mark those as it would give them a status that says this isn't available to check out before they've actually been pulled on the shelf, just when they're on the pick list.
Right, and so right now you have a system preference that lets you choose whether to allow patrons to check out any hold that they come up with, or not check out any hold that's not theirs. So the holds that you haven't pulled yet are out there on the shelf, and my patrons find them, come to the self-check, which we're 100% self-check now. So they come to the self-check with one of these we haven't had time to go get yet, and they can't check it out. So then they're looking for somebody to help them. And it's really a problem for us.
Well, I think, it's imperative that you weigh in on the bug, because we want to find a middle ground. The big thing is, want the system to display things accurately, and when it shows something available and it's not truly available, it's actually on hold or something. If I haven't read this, let's see here.
I think it's important to make the distinction. I mean, I guess, again, and this is pointed out in the ticket, but when something is on hold versus when it's on the hold shelf and it's been pulled. Because we allow people, if they come in and find something on the shelf, even if it's on the holds to pull list, they can still check it out because we always get
that's the problem, that if they're not able, because it's on the pull list, you can't check it out. That's not going to work for us either.
And when you've gone all self checks, it really causes a problem. So I'll work on it. I'll comment on this one or open another bug.
I think this is really approaching, we just need another status on the item. If it's not messing with with that existing feature, then that's not a problem. It's we're not adding to that issue. We just want to know more specifics about an item rather than it being a vague available.
True. So maybe a separate ticket would be better.
No, I would say comment on this one.
Oh, okay.
That way, while this is being shaped and dealt with, we can take those other issues into account and because we don't want to shape this one. We don't want to do something with this one and then have a whole separate issue to resolve after it's completed. We don't want to mess up one thing and go back and fix it. We want to kind of address it while it's being worked on.
Okay.
Yeah, I would make your comments part of this conversation instead of starting another conversation.
Okay, I'll do that.
Though this ticket does not affect any functionality. I mean, this is just about, it doesn't show as available in the OPAC, which I think makes a lot of sense. I think we do need to address the idea of the functionality separately. Because as far as I can see for this is just updating the XSLT, so it just says not available, right?
I believe so, just so that people have a little bit more clue as to what's going on with an item.
Right. So I do think that, though I agree you should throw into this ticket, there is another. We are really talking about a separate problem, which is what actually happens when somebody puts in a hold on an available item.
Okay. I'll have to think about it.
Seriously, Nancy, even if it doesn't interfere with what you're concerned about, putting that in there will just help bring it on the radar to make sure that it is not touched, so the more that you can contribute to that and weigh in with those concerns, the more that those things aren't going to get overlooked.
Okay. All right.
And I've been trying to attend or not really attend, but just watch and read the development meetings and the documentation meetings and all the other meetings that happen on IRC. And that's one thing that the people that are doing a lot of the people that are doing the developments aren't working in libraries. They don't know what kind of impact all the time. They're not able to see all the consequences of what they're doing as developers on what's happening at a library. And so if you can chime in there and say, this is what I'm worried about, the developers, I think, will actually be really happy to hear that, because there are a lot of things that they're doing that they think, oh, wouldn't this be a really cool idea, something to do, but they're not taking into consideration what the library users need, because they're not actually the people that are using the software. So, any of us commenting on these on Bugzilla and saying, this is how this is going to affect my library, that's really useful for them. And they don't hear enough of it because quite honestly, when you look at some of these tickets and you go, God, I have no idea what these people are talking about. And Bugzilla is like, 85%. God, I have no idea what, how is this change to the back end of the database going to have an impact on me? It's really hard to tell sometimes. But when you see something there that you can tell, I think this will have an impact on how our staff uses the software. You know, speak up and say, wow, this is a really good idea. Or, God, please don't do this. Or at the very least, make it something that I can turn off if I don't want it by making it tying it to a system preference. That's the kind of stuff that they need to hear because they don't hear it often enough. So.
Yeah, and this is a good general, guideline. There's lots of bugs out there, and if there's something that's of interest to you, I encourage you to get, add yourself to it to keep up with what's going on with it. But I also encourage you to, speak up and say your thoughts. Do you think something's going the right way? Do you think it is, veering off course? Do you think it's going to affect something that's dear and precious to you? Those comments make a world of difference, and I can't encourage people enough to get involved in those. Even if it's just for a short blurb or whatever. I know everybody's time is precious, but it's important to get that feedback. Okay, we need to get through this list as much as possible, so we're going to move on. Send notification on creation of manual invoice. Lisette.
I just put the bug in the chat. It's bug 18623. We find our librarians have found that they often process like a large stack of damaged books at the same time, and then letting patrons know that they've been charged for books ends up being pretty time consuming, even if you're just like copy and pasting into an email because you're doing like 10 or 15 at once and want to make it sound good. So we think it would be great if we could have it be an automated notice, say when a particular kind of manual invoice is created based on the type of charge. So that's my bug for that.
I think that's a really interesting idea.
So are you saying create a manual or notice for a manual invoice for each item that's created, or would it be kind of like I can't even think of the words. Man, George, help me.
What I'm thinking that what you're describing, the way that I hear it, Lizette, is that you somebody's down in the basement and they've got a stack. Patrons left their backpack in the rain and they've got 5 books that have all been destroyed. Somebody goes through, scans them, creates a manual invoice for each item, billing the patron. And then at the end of the day, Koha is going to generate a notice that either comes out as a print notice or is sent as an email notice with the regular email processing at 2 o'clock the next morning or whenever it is that you guys have that happen. Is that what you're kind of talking about?
Yeah.
At the end of the day,
all those items rather than just one notice.
Yeah, like a digest, or if if they did 5 for 5 different patrons, then each patron would get an email.
Yeah.
I
think the idea of you create a bunch of manual invoices, and when Koha bills a patron for a lost item after it's been overdue for a certain amount of time, that happens automatically. This is just a way of adding manually created invoices into that same workflow.
Yes.
Thank you, George, for being my brain here.
No problem. I think it's an excellent idea.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I can see that being an enhancement that somebody's going to want to be paid for creating.
Probably.
And if Bywater wants to do that, I think it's an excellent idea, and I think we would be able to help out. So keep that in mind. If they do say, "Oh, this is going to cost $4,000," let me know, and I think Knuckles would be able to chip in. Anybody else want to chip in? Everybody's on mute now. That's weird.
Okay. Well, yeah.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say thank you, George.
Sure.
You also have local holds prioritization by hierarchical groups.
So the 1805 update replaced the current search groups functionality with a hierarchical group system. And our district would really like to, our consortium has a couple of districts in it and would be interested if it would be possible for local holds priority to fill within the district before filling within, like instead of filling at Moscow for Moscow items, if it could also fill at Beauville for Moscow items before sending down to Lewiston, which is in our consortium, but outside of our library district. And so Christopher and I had talked about this last fall some, and he had some concerns about just making sure that it could still function the way it does now for the libraries that wanted to. And this is the bug number. We talked about it a little bit last time. Bywater had told us we couldn't, they didn't really want to talk to us about it more until they had got the hierarchical systems in, but now they're a little more open to discussion about where we actually want it to go. So if other people are interested in this, and just put the bug in the chat, 20747.
What's the funding status of that?
So Nichols said that they would put in, I have it written down somewhere,
$1,000.
$1,000, and then I think Valnet was going to do the rest of it unless anyone else wanted to chip in, and it was going to be, I'm checking real quick. I think it was $5,000, George.
I think that's what it was, and I said Nichols would easily be able to do 20% of that, which is why I know it came out to $1,000, and if I said 20%, that would leave the remaining at $4,000.
I know that our library is really interested in looking into not necessarily this, but something related to the local holds priority, in that there be some sort of override, because we have some items that are existing at one or two libraries that aren't getting out to other people because of this. You know, everybody with holds just at our library are getting the items, and other people are sitting there for years without getting their hands on it. If you were to make that part of the project, because I know that they're going to overlap, it's involved in the same preference. If you make that part of it, it help with funding, because that's really an important, crucial part of it. And I think if we have separate tickets going out there, then one's going to block the other.
Yeah.
So if you choose to do that, I can see about what we can do to contribute to that.
Okay. I'll talk to Bywater about it.
All right. Right now, I do have a request for a quote to find out how much that would cost to do. So, hopefully, we can converge and bring that together, so it'll make it happen faster and streamline the process.
Do you have a Bywater number for that I can tell them?
Not yet. I haven't had any response on it yet.
Oh, okay.
All right, George, GDPR.
Oh, did I say I wanted to talk about GDPR?
It's on the agenda.
How many of you know about GDPR? A couple. That's the General Data Privacy Regulation in the European Union. And it's affecting, I don't know how many of you since the last half of May or so have gotten emails saying we're updating our participation, our agreement on how you use our website. It's almost exclusively because of GDPR. And the Koha community has an omnibus ticket that I'm probably not going to be able to find right now.
18081.
18081.
It's linked on the agenda. There's also a link on the agenda to the wiki post about it, which is a little more readable.
the Koha community is trying to make sure that Koha is going to be compliant, is going to be able to be compliant with GDPR. There's a couple of things right now where we're not. There's a couple of bugs. Right now, when you mark something as lost, if you have certain system preferences set, if a patron pays for something that's been marked lost, it records their name in a field on the, it's like the paid for field on the item record. So the patron's name is attached to the item that they've paid for, and that's not going to be something you can do in GDPR. But essentially, you know, the things that are important to know about GDPR and how it's going to affect the functions in Koha. If a patron, when they sign up to get a library card, and you're going to be putting their information in the database in the European Union, you have to present them with the terms, with like the policies about privacy and confidentiality that the computer system that they're agreeing to when they sign up. And so there will be, like with the if anybody is using the patron self-registration, there'll be a way to use the self-registration when a patron creates their account. It will give them like, this is the use agreement, and you have to click I agree, and it will show everybody what they're agreeing to when they sign up for a library card. When a patron wants to have their information removed from the system, provided they don't have any outstanding transactions like checked out items or fines or fees attached to their account. The GDPR rule is that, you know, there should be an easy way for staff to click one button and have all of the patrons' private information removed completely from the database. And so the Koha community is working on tools to make that something that's easier for staff to do, where instead of shunting all of the borrower information to a separate table called deleted borrowers, that it will just anonymize that or completely destroy that information, which is going to have an impact with the way statistics are kept right now. Since there's so little patron data recorded in the statistics table, it means that if you want to know certain things about patrons who have checked things out, you're not going to be able to link to the deleted borrowers table anymore to get data on patrons who have been who've had their accounts deleted in Koha. So there's a whole bunch of issues like this that are going to be that omnibus bug is kind of being tied to those tickets that are related to all of these privacy issues. I, for one, think that all of this is not, I think it's a great idea, you know, to be able to make it so that, you know, it's easier to get this private data out of Koha.
So are they consulting with any sort of attorney on this? Kind of assuming that we know the law and we're going to implement it.
The members of the community that are in Europe are working with their people in Europe. So, because that's, the way I would describe it is, you know, there's all of these rules in Europe that have a nice side effect for us, which is making Koha more privacy friendly. So the people in France and Germany and Switzerland that are using Koha, you know, they're the members of the community that are kind of spearheading a lot of this because they've got a lot at stake in making sure Koha works the way it's supposed to. And I don't know how closely they're working with attorneys, though.
My concern. Go ahead, Ben.
Oh, go ahead.
Ben, were you saying something?
Oh, you would hate to lose things like aggregate statistics or billing information or whatever because we think that it doesn't belong when maybe there is perfectly legally allowed to be in there.
Well, and that's
a big impact.
there have already been a lot of weird issues that have come up on ALA Think Tank is a Facebook group. Somebody for the owner of the Library Thing website said that an author has contacted him saying, you know, I want my name taken off of your website. And with that, you know, he was able to figure out that that's not covered by GDPR because the author of a publication has manifestly made their information public, and there's an exception for that in GDPR. So, you know, the community is trying to do things. They're trying to come up with ways that they're not breaking any information. And the things that they're doing as far as the, you know, patron statistics are going is they're trying to move. So when a patron checks an item out, currently there's like the checkout location and a couple of things from the patron information is being moved into the statistics table. And I think they're trying to put more things in there. So the only things that are in the statistics table are like the borrower number and then the information that people want to track. But then ultimately, the stuff that relates it to a specific individual patron is the kind of stuff that needs to be deleted. And so they're trying to figure out ways to make sure that the specific information gets deleted without losing the statistical demographic data, because it is okay to keep the demographic data so long as the actual patron's name and contact information is removed. So
my biggest concern is, you know, the libraries that are, you know, relying on Koha's, you know, information for transactions. You know, for example, you know, paying fines and fees. You know, if you know, data information is removed, that makes it a little sticky for them. Like if they're being audited, you know, you can't track transactions back to the people that those transactions were with. So, you know, that's my big concern. You know, not that you know, we don't hold on to that information as long, but you know, we have libraries that do. They heavily rely on Koha's information to be accurate, and you know, when you want to go back and look at records and find out, okay, who is this payment made to, and that patron's been deleted, they're kind of in some hot water with the auditors.
Well, and that's why also, you know, most of the changes that are being made so that they can be optional. So, but I would recommend anybody that's got some concerns about that. It's 18081. Well, it's a palindrome, isn't it? That'd be the bug number to take a look at, because it just says omnibus bug, but then it's got a link to every other bug that's being dealt with related to the GDPR rules. So.
Okay.
Thanks for letting us know about that, because I don't think I would have done this.
All right, we have committee reports. We're going to breeze through this really quick. We've already talked about the conference committee. Before we hit any of those, I do want to hit one thing, because Ben, you were here, and one thing that's been off of our radar has been developments. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to touch on that real quick, make sure that we talked about this before this meeting ends, that we do need to get back on track with that, because we have some funds that koha-US is responsible for, and we need to get our developments committee back on track. Now that we've got a lot of loose ends tied up elsewhere, and we need to get our plan of attack on how we're going to fund developments so that we can move forward.
Well, let's plan on meeting early next week then. If I recall correctly, I had emailed out a question about something, and I think we can catch up on that. But yeah, I'll shoot out an email after this meeting. We'll plan on meeting early next week.
Okay, great. All right, anything from fundraising?
The fundraising committee meeting, we mostly talked about the plans for the meeting that happened yesterday that I had to leave early on. And we did, I need to get John the text that I added to the one of the letters we were going to send out. And I think that was about it.
Finance.
The full Finance Committee report is linked in the agenda. We're up to 14 members. Our finances look fine. The only real expense that we had in May was the filing report for the state of Kansas, which we are required to pay as part of our maintenance as a not-for-profit incorporated business. We are compliant now with federal and state of Kansas requirements for 2017. And we've also received our first Amazon Smile transfer into the new bank account, which actually covers 6 months, the last 3 months of 2017 and the first 3 months of 2018. We've received a total of just under $260 through Amazon Smile. And anybody at any time can go to amazon.smile.com and select koha-US as the nonprofit organization to which they can dedicate 0.5% of their eligible Amazon purchases. I'm guessing perhaps some of the larger Kansas consortia are doing this because $116 on approximately $23,000 of purchases would be far more than most of us would buy in 3, 5, 10 years. So I'm guessing that there is some corporate activity going to here, which is, of course, most welcomed.
You haven't seen my credit card bill, you know.
Yeah, I was about to say,
the only other thing that remains
the other day, and I spent a lot on Amazon.
Oh, all right. Let me find. I'm going to have to talk to our finance department to see if I can do that with our corporate account, because we buy a lot of stuff for the library at Amazon. But
the interesting thing about Amazon Smile is that while we see how much we get every quarter, because obviously it appears on our financial statement, you do not know what you are at any point in time in the quarter, nor can you see how many individuals / Amazon users actually have your nonprofit organization selected. So this could be 1,000 people, it could be 10 accounts. We have absolutely no way of knowing. There remains one legacy issue which is going to be the bane of my existence, and that's the removal of Robin's name from the PayPal account and the insertion of my name into it. I've resubmitted the paperwork. It seems to have gotten stuck again, which to me implies that it's not going to happen again, even though I've submitted everything. And what I think is probably happening and will be resolved if I get denied again, I can't submit the change of paperwork, although it says nothing about that. The change of paperwork might have to be submitted by the person whose name is coming off of the account. Because anybody, if you think about it, could come up with letterhead and a note that says, oh yeah, take this person off and replace it with this name. That requirement is made nowhere. It's not stated anywhere, but that might be the thing that's holding it back, even though all I get is canned responses telling me that you didn't submit the necessary documentation, even though I have. So if this second attempt fails, I will write everything that Robin can simply sign off on and submit, and hopefully that will take care of the problem.
Have you tried changing your name to Robin? That might work. Might be easier.
It might be, because for everything else, which takes time and is now completed, this is the one thing that is not yet done, and it's just annoying as all get out that I can't get this one thing done. And anytime you try to contact them, all they ever do is send back a form. You can never get a hold of a person there, which is just absolutely annoying. If you do have any questions, feel free to email me at treasurer@koha-us.org. Your questions and comments about the financial status of the organization are always welcomed and appreciated.
Great.
And I did put in the chat box there, I put in a link to become a member. If there's anybody here that's not a member, there's the link to become a member. And if you have an extra $500,000, there's the link there to donate it all to us.
Thank you, George.
John, I'm grateful for you being on the team this year. You have done such a phenomenal job getting us in order, and for anybody having to face the stuff with PayPal or whatever, I couldn't ask for a better person to help get us straightened out. So thank you very much for everything that you were doing.
Thank you very much, Christopher. Thank you.
Yeah. All
I'd
right.
give you a standing ovation, except then you couldn't see my hands.
It'd be a little awkward.
We'll all buy you a joint when we see you in Oregon in September.
George, you have a fixation with those things, don't you? All right.
What else are you going to do in Oregon?
Hey, they've got
Go to
great
Mount St. Helens in Washington.
That's true. We should organize a day trip.
So, end of the agenda, ongoing discussion, breaking the Linux barrier. We're gonna cut this short because we did start late, but we are over time. Ongoing discussion with breaking the Linux barrier, folks. Anything that we can do to help make that transition for librarians and other people involved in Koha easier. We want to keep focusing on those things and find ways to make this an easier environment to work in. So keep thinking about that. We're going to have that on. We're going to try and have that on the topic for KohaCon. Thank you everybody for showing up today. Jason, next meeting.
Okay, so we don't have a board meeting planned because it's currently scheduled for July 4th. So I don't know if we want to schedule that or we can do that off camera and send that out later.
We'll converse and figure something out.
Okay, so the next general meeting will still probably for sure be July 11th, which is a Wednesday, 10:30 Central as usual, same time.
All right. Again, the website's been updated. Please feel free to check it out. Our learning page is getting more information as we work on the site. So I encourage everybody to go pop over, take a look. Would love feedback. And I do have a link to the KohaCon site on there on the front page. So be sure to register for that. And with that, I want to say goodbye to everybody. Thank you for coming today, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks.